Thank you, Vicki. Are you ready for me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for signing up for Advancing Accessibility with Mobile. And our subtitle today is How Natural User Interfaces Make Life Easier for All Ages and Abilities. And I think you'll see throughout this talk that it's not just about people with specific disabilities, but it's about everybody. It's about making computing easier for all. Once again, I'm Nicole Hennig, and you can find out more about me at my website, nicolehennig.com. This is a picture of me on the top of Mount Lennon near Tucson, and that's where I am for the winter. I'll be heading back to New England for the summer when it gets too hot here, but right now it's still very, very beautiful and very sunny. So previously I was an academic librarian at MIT, and I worked many years as the web manager for the libraries and the last few years as head of the user experience department. And in 2013 I left to start my own business helping librarians and educators use the best mobile technologies. So if you want to learn more about my offerings, I have books and courses and things you can learn more on my website, nicolehennig.com. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about this term NUIs, which stands for Natural User Interfaces, and we're going to define that and look at many different examples. We're going to also show you how it's making computing easier for people of all ages and all abilities. We're going to group these NUIs into three categories: touch, sound, and sight. And we'll also talk about why it's important for everyone to pay attention to these matters of disability, not only because we want to serve disabled users, but also because making services inclusive helps everyone. We'll look at four different categories of disabilities: vision, hearing, motor skills, and learning disabilities. And I'll show you some specific stories of how these technologies are improving people's lives. Then we'll look at quite a few different examples of natural user interfaces, both apps and devices. And at the end, we'll talk about some opportunities for how libraries can help users with this information. At the end, I'll give you a link to a resource guide. It's a PDF that you can download, a handout. It has links to absolutely everything we talk about today, so don't worry if you missed something. It's all there in the handout, and we'll email you that link at the end, and I'll have it up on my slide at the end as well. Also, I'd like to mention that we're going to show 5 short little video examples during this webinar, and the way we're going to do it is ask you to watch them on your own by pasting a link into the chat box when that slide comes. The reason for that is that sometimes when you do it through the webinar software, there's a lag and a delay between the audio and video, so I found it works better to have you watch on your own. So when we get to each slide, we'll tell you what to do. There'll be a link in the chat box. You can go watch it, and I'll pause, and then you can come back to the slides. So let's get started. So first of all, what is a natural user interface, or a NUI? Really, those are interfaces where humans interact with computers using actions related to everyday behavior like touch, gestures, speech, or conversation. And really the goal is just to make it easy for people to use computers without having to learn complicated ways of doing things. Now, you probably remember command line interfaces from the old days. Maybe you even still use commands for certain things, but to do that, you have to remember what to type in order to make the computer do what you want. So GUIs, or graphical user interfaces, were designed to make computing easier to learn. By having a metaphor of a desktop with a trash can and menus, you no longer needed to memorize commands. You could just look under each menu to find the command you needed. There's also kind of a fun acronym for that, WIMP, which is Windows, Icons, Menus, and Pointers. And now with NUIs, or natural user interfaces, it's really getting more possible to move away from these abstract metaphors and towards interactions that really do feel more natural, like touch screens, speech recognition, and voice commands. That's good news. Also, experts agree that NUIs won't entirely replace the use of GUIs. GUIs will continue to exist for applications where you really need it, like a huge spreadsheet on your desktop. So really it offers a new niche of computing where we take advantage of the unique abilities of these NUIs. And in this workshop we'll look at several examples of how these interfaces work and how they make computing easier for everybody. So first I'm going to go over the types of NUIs, and then later I'll show you some detailed examples. So let's look at the 3 categories. First of all, touch. The most obvious example of that is touch screens with multi-touch gestures like on smartphones and tablets, and I'm sure you're familiar with that. Another example of a touch NUI is a haptic interface, such as the Apple Watch's ability to tap your wrist as a way to notify you, so that's known as haptics. With Force Touch and 3D Touch, those are two new technologies. Apple has brought them out in the Apple Watch and in the trackpad on the newest models of their MacBook and on the latest models of iPhones. So with Force Touch, you can push down on the screen to activate certain functions, and with 3D Touch, there are more sensitive levels of touch based on a lighter or a firmer push. And experts are saying that we're probably going to see this same technology come to Android at some point in the future too. Now for sound, there's speech recognition, like that used by Siri and other digital assistants. Some of the leading ones you may have heard of are Google Now, Microsoft Cortana, and the Amazon Echo device with its Alexa. In fact, the Amazon Echo, you talk to it, it's called a conversational interface. So it can react. It uses a woman's voice, and it's called Alexa, and you can ask it questions, play music, and control smart devices in your home. And we'll look at some details with that too. Another type of sound NUI is this new category called hearables. And those are new kinds of devices that merge the health tracking features of smartwatches and fitness bands with high quality audio like what you find in premium earbuds. An example is something called the Dash, which is a wireless biosensing headphone, and we'll look at that a bit later. Now for sight, the camera can be a seeing eye like that used by Google Translate. You can point your camera at text in one language and see it translated to another language on the fly. Also for sight, your camera can be a scanner like with document scanning apps or barcode scanning apps. And some of those even have optical character recognition so it can translate what it sees to written text. ScanBot for iOS and Android is a good example of that. Now there's also, for sight, there's augmented reality, which is the ability to show a virtual overlay on top of what you're seeing, like with the app Layar. And in this picture, you're in an art museum, and some of them will show additional art on top of the art or information about the art on top of the art. So we'll talk about some educational examples of that as well. So when you think about it, all of us over time move between times when we're independent or dependent on others. So if you've ever had a broken bone or another injury, you've probably experienced that need for assistance. Maybe you wear glasses or contact lenses, or you have braces on your teeth, or maybe you know someone who has a pacemaker. So whether you need those technologies in a temporary or a permanent way, you're still using assistive technologies. In fact, you could say that all technology is assistive technology, right? Even your smartphone or headphones augment your abilities in some way. Separating technologies into assistive versus regular no longer makes sense, really, in our world where everybody benefits from these technologies that increase our abilities. So it's really important to think about how technology can improve lives, whether you work with people who have recognized disabilities or not. This idea of normalcy based on a bell curve of statistics about how your body or mind should perform, that's a recent one since the 19th century. It goes along with the idea that disabilities are medical conditions in need of cures and the idea that disabled bodies are somehow deficient. These days, there's talk of turning people into cyborgs with both utopian and dystopian visions of how that might play out. For example, there are exoskeletons designed to make soldiers run faster and carry heavy loads, and they've been developed for military research, and now they're being used to help people who are paralyzed stand up and walk. And that's proving to be wonderful for some people, but it's also sparked debate. That's because there are some who want to fix people with disabilities while doing nothing about the infrastructure, laws, or social norms that make society more accessible for everyone. So there's a strong thread, particularly in the autism community and in the deaf community, that they're not people in need of fixing. And if you haven't had the opportunity to think much about this, these two articles are really good ones to read, and they will be linked in the handout that you get at the end. They're really interesting. So improving our physical and virtual worlds for people with disabilities makes things better for everyone. Like, for example, if you add a curb cut in the sidewalk for wheelchairs, that makes it easier for people pushing strollers or pulling a rolling suitcase or riding a bike. And in the virtual world, making text resizable on websites helps people without any vision problems, like maybe in a situation where you're doing a presentation and you need to show people in the back row something specific. So the main thread really is that people are not in need of fixing, we need to fix the environment. So Google's Android and Apple's iOS have many excellent accessibility features built into the platform. So if you look at Apple's iOS accessibility site, you can see they divided up into these 4 categories: vision, hearing, physical and motor skills, and learning and literacy. And they have quite a number of features to help with all of these. Google is similar. This is their Android Accessibility Help Center. And one thing to keep in mind if you're an Android user is that not every device has the exact same set of features. Some features are specific to certain models, so it's also good to look at the manufacturer's website for their accessibility features. So rather than go through each feature and explain it, I'd like to tell you 4 specific stories of particular people and how mobile devices are improving their lives. And I got these examples from this really good website called Bridging Apps at bridgingapps.org. Their subtitle is Bridging the Gap Between Technology and People with Disabilities. It's a really good site to take a look at. So the first story is about someone with autism. Susan is a speech language pathologist at an outpatient rehabilitation clinic for kids up to age 21. And a lot of the kids that she works with have an autism diagnosis. So one of the apps that she finds really useful is called Proloquo to Go for iPad. It makes it easy to add pictures with vocabulary words of objects that are meaningful to the child. The child can touch specific items on the screen as a way to start communicating. So she tells the story of a student who at first could only communicate with sounds, squeals, and temper tantrums. But using this app, he was able not only to request things that he wanted, but also to greet people, ask questions, and begin speaking verbally in short phrases. And here's a quote from Susan. She says, "The success I have found when using this app has been amazing. Children have a desire to communicate, and to give them access to do so is exciting." And she also talks about this and other apps for people with autism and emphasizes that while you can't replace the actual therapist, these technologies are extremely beneficial. Many children are interested, engaged, and motivated when using this type of technology. So that's really good news. And here's the second story from Bridging Apps. Michael is the father of Colin, and he's a young boy with autism spectrum disorder. Michael tells the story of how his son likes to use an iOS app called Write My Name. With it, he writes his name, his brother's name, and he spells out words, tracing every letter of the alphabet with his finger on the screen. It helps him develop the fine motor skills that many kids with ASD struggle with. And he also talks about how much Colin loves the calendar and the calculator since he's precocious in math and with dates. And one good point that he makes is that while some experts are critical of the use of apps with ASD kids because it's taking them away from interaction with people, he said that many of these apps help form a bridge that leads Colin to communicate more in a way that's less threatening to him. So he's very grateful for how these devices and apps are improving life for his son. And you can read the full story on that website, Bridging Apps. My third example is about a successful entrepreneur. His name is Todd. He's a successful businessman, mentor, and public speaker. And an accident at age 8 caused a spinal cord injury that left him as a C4 quadriplegic. He uses a device called a Techless Shield that enables him to use his iPhone, iPad, or laptop without touching the screen. The control is done entirely with his chin and mouth since he has no movement below the shoulders. So I'd like you to hear in Todd's own words what a great difference this has made for him in his life. So this is going to be the first video that we watch. So Vicky's going to paste the link into the chat box so that you can click on it. And I'd like you to watch this on your own and stop at 2 minutes and 8 seconds. And if you don't see the counter, that's okay. It's when he starts to talk about his friends, when he's done talking about his wife. And I'll give you enough time to watch this, and then I'll continue with my webinar slides. I'll be watching it silently on my iPhone while you do this. So go ahead and watch this video. Okay, I hope you can see how much that meant to him to be able to text his wife without an intermediary. I think you could probably identify with that. So go ahead and come back to the webinar slides now. I'm going to continue. So our fourth story is about a seventh grader with cerebral palsy. His name is Connor, and he used to depend on his mom to read to him. Now he uses a service called Bookshare that offers a free online library for students who qualify with print disabilities. And he uses an iOS app called Read2Go on his iPad to read the books on his own. With that app, he can follow words that are highlighted on the screen and listen to the text being read aloud. There's a similar app for Android called GoRead. And here's a quote from his teacher, Mrs. Meadows. She says, "Connor has more freedom to learn and fewer physical burdens. He also gets his school books on time. He's able to follow highlighted words on the tablet screen and listen to text read aloud. The multimodal reading experience, to see and hear text read aloud, helps him to comprehend information." So those two apps together are really useful for a lot of people. So now, before I go into the next section where I talk about a bunch of specific apps and devices, I would like you to think about how these technologies can be useful to all sorts of people, whether they have recognized disabilities or not, because I'm going to ask you when we're done looking at the examples to put your thoughts in the chat box. So be thinking about, like, how could these be used for anyone as I show you each example. We're going to look at apps and devices, and we're going to group them by touch, sound, and sight. So let's start with touch. So human anatomy apps for medical students are really booming right now. They make use of touchscreens in innovative ways to help students understand and visualize the human body and its processes. A really good example is 3D Brain by Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. It's free and it's available for both Android and iOS. You can use the touchscreen to rotate and zoom around interactive structures to learn how each region of the brain functions. Another developer that makes excellent anatomy apps is called 3D4 Medical. Their complete anatomy app for iPad is one of the highest rated apps by medical students. They have several different apps for various systems of the human body. Not only can you slice and rotate the brain to learn about it, but you can add your own notes, you can drop pins to mark specific regions, just like you would in Google Maps, and you can quiz yourself. So for learning about anatomy, being able to touch and manipulate the images with your finger, it's so much more intuitive than using a mouse and menus. So that you can get a feel for this, I'm going to have you watch another video, and it's a short one, 1 minute and 40 seconds, and Vicky's going to paste that into the chat box. You can go ahead and watch that. It's just a video at the top of their webpage. So watch that and then come back to the webinar slides. Okay, I hope you could see how effective that might be for anatomy students to really be able to manipulate with your fingers. Those really are amazing apps. Now let's talk about haptic. Haptic interfaces involve touch, and they can include the act of touching a device and also the device communicating back to you by touch or vibration. A good example of this is the Apple Watch, which uses a technology that Apple calls their Taptic Engine. When you receive a notification, it lightly taps you on the wrist. You can also choose to receive subtle audio cues along with the taps if you want. And these 3 screenshots here are from my Apple Watch. You can see I have it touching me for text messages, Facebook notifications, and Amazon package deliveries. So one way that this is used is during the walking directions inside of Apple Maps on the watch. Once you've entered where you want to go and started the directions, the watch will tap you in different ways to indicate whether to turn right or left. You'll also feel a vibration when you're on the last leg of the trip and when you arrive. So it's especially useful for blind users, as you can imagine. In fact, I found this really interesting podcast by a blind technology expert from Australia named David Woodbridge. He's got a podcast where he talks about all sorts of different technologies for blind people. And in this episode, he gives an audio demo of walking around with the Apple Watch. It's a recording of his walk in a residential neighborhood with his seeing eye dog and the watch, and he's on his way to pick up his boys from school. I'm going to play you a little audio excerpt from this, and in it you can hear the sounds of traffic on his street, you can hear the voice on his watch instructing him, and you can hear the little audio dings that go along with the vibrations. And he talks about how it works for him for every step of the way. So I'd ask for your patience just for a moment while I get this queued up, and I'm going to adjust the volume to make it so that you can hear it.
Okay, let's get on the street and we'll check on the Apple Watch for directions. On the street, tap my watch.
Take a left on 225 meters.
Okay, take a left on Gilder Drive in 225 meters. And what I'll do is I'll pause the recording and won't make you wait. I'll just put the bits in the recording where I check with the Apple Watch and I'll let you know about directions I'm getting as well. Yes, I thought you were being slack. Come on. No, straight on. Stop. Okay, I think I'm halfway there. Let's just tap on the watch and see what it says.
Take a left on Gilder Drive in 105 meters.
Take a left on Gilder Drive in 105 meters. Let's keep walking to the corner. And I just got a tick-tick and a vibration from my watch to turn left, which I'm about to do. Step over that drain that's dribbling away onto the grass to go around the corner because I've got to walk on the roads around my area. Okay, I'm around the corner. Yeah, it's going to walk another 10 meters and then we'll check with maps again. Okay, let's stop. Tap my watch screen.
Take a left on Yeo Street in 85 meters. Dimmed.
That's correct. Take a left on Yeo Street in 85 meters. Thank you very much. Okay, let's keep going to that corner. Good boy, Josh.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording there and go back to my notes here, so hang on a second. I hope you can see how, what a good thing that is for blind people. I was very happy when I found these because I thought that maybe it might work well for blind people, but to hear them actually talking about it is really a nice thing. Now, another example of a blind person who's enthusiastic about the Apple Watch is this young woman named Molly Watt. She writes about her experience in her blog post called My Ears, My Eyes, My Apple Watch. She's an advocate for people living with Usher syndrome, which for her means she's deaf and mostly blind. So here's a quote from her. She says, "So far for me, the most useful app on the Apple Watch is Maps. On my iPhone, I can plan my journey from one destination to another. For me, it will be on foot with Eunice, my guide dog. This is where haptics really comes into its own. I can be directed without hearing or sight, but by a series of taps via the watch on my wrist. 12 taps means turn right at the junction, or 3 pairs of 2 taps means turn left. I'm still experimenting with this, but so far very impressed. Usher syndrome accessible." So you can read more about that on her blog. I also felt like that was really good news. Now let's go to the sound category. We'll start with speech recognition, and it really has improved quite a lot since the early days when Siri was first introduced on the iPhone and there were so many jokes about it, right? Now many apps take advantage of this, and one simple example is the Merriam-Webster Dictionary app, and it's for both Android and iOS. With the app, you can speak a word, it will hear and recognize it, and show you the dictionary definition. Of course, you can also look up words just by typing them in. And another really useful feature that I love is that when you tap on a small speaker icon, it will pronounce the word for you. So these screenshots here are from it on my Apple Watch too. So it works both on the phone and the watch. Many children's books for the iPad are being designed to take advantage of several features of the iPad, like audio and sound recording. A really good example here is the children's storybook app called The Peddler Lady of Gushing Cross. And in the app, you can have the story read aloud to you while you follow the text, or you can turn off the read aloud and read it yourself or to your child. The read aloud narration is available in English, Spanish, or French. It also includes a very nice feature where you can record your own voice reading the book and save it in the app. So I also have a video demo for this one that I made for a class I teach online called The Book as iPad App. And we're going to paste this into the chat box. This link will bring you actually into the middle of the video where I start talking about this app, because I talked about a different book before that. But don't worry, it'll start in the right place, and just watch to the end and go ahead and come back to the slides. Okay, I hope you can think of some uses for that for people of all abilities as well. Now let's talk about reading aloud for all ages. Capty Narrator is a really useful app for having text read aloud to you. With it, you can save text from many different sources like websites, ebooks from Project Gutenberg, and documents in your Dropbox or Google Drive accounts. You can make playlists of items you want to hear and then listen to them whenever you like. You may also follow along, reading the text and seeing each word highlighted as it's read. It's available for iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, and also for Firefox on the Mac and any browser on Windows XP or greater. They're still working on an Android version. And in the settings, there are several different narrator voices and several different languages to choose from. You can set the speed to a rate that's most comfortable to listen to. You can listen to a ton of different formats like Word docs, PDFs, HTML pages, EPUB books as long as they don't have DRM on them, and a few more. It's a free app for the basic features, and with the premium app, you get more voices. So let's watch a little demo video of this. This is just a 30-second one from the vendor. Go ahead and paste that into the chat box, and we'll watch their little demo video.
CAFD is a productivity unit.
Okay, I hope you can see how that could be useful for a lot of different purposes. Now let's go on to audio wayfinding for the blind. Blind Square and Sendero GPS Lookaround are apps for blind people to help them navigate the world. They use GPS and the compass to locate you, and then they gather information from Foursquare and OpenStreetMap to tell you what's nearby, like coffee shops or transit stops. They use high-quality voices to tell you about interesting places and street crossings nearby. They're available in several different languages, and they work in many locations worldwide. You can use them together with your navigation apps to hear what's nearby as you're navigating. Blind Square is for iOS, and Sendero GPS Lookaround is for both Android and iOS. So these screenshots are from Sendero, and this is the Blind Square one. So as you can imagine, blind people really like using these apps. I've heard good reviews. The next thing I'd like to talk about is a conversational interface in the Amazon Echo. As you know, you've probably heard of Google Now, Microsoft Cortana, and Apple Siri. Those are the leading smart digital assistants, and now Amazon has their new one called the Echo. And the name of it is Alexa. It's like a woman's name. So it's similar to like using Siri on your phone, but it's not a mobile device. It's a Bluetooth speaker that serves as a conversational smart assistant. It takes the form of a 9-inch tall black cylinder that you plug into power and connect to your Wi-Fi network. You can activate the listening mode by saying, Alexa, then you ask your question. You can speak in a normal voice from anywhere in the room, and she answers in a natural way using a woman's voice. Of course, if you ask something beyond what she can do, she'll say she can't find the answer, and sometimes she does mishear you. However, she does work really well for the things she's programmed to do, which are very many. So let's watch our fifth and final video. It's the demo video from Amazon, which is kind of cheesy in some ways, but I think it does a really good job of showing you what it can do. And this one, we're just going to watch it up to 1 minute and 48 seconds. It's after she sets the timer in the kitchen. So go ahead and watch this one. Okay, so let's come back to the slides now, and I hope you can see how fun that is. I have an Amazon Alexa that I got at Christmas time, and I really enjoy using it for a lot of things. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is smart hearing aids. And hearing aids are really improving, and now there are apps that help you control them. What's even more convenient is when you can control it from your Apple Watch while your phone's tucked away in your bag or your pocket. Now, the same woman we heard from earlier, Molly Watt, who has Usher syndrome, she also talks about getting this new hearing aid. She has a post where she tells about her experience of getting this thing called the ReSound Link 2 Smart Aid. It works together with the ReSound Smart app for either Android or iOS, and it allows you to control the volume, switching between smart programs with settings optimized for different environments, finding your mislaid hearing aids, and more. It's just one of many models of hearing aids that connect to your smartphone via Bluetooth. So going again back to her blog, I'd like to tell you what she says about this, and I have a little quote here. And she talks about the first time she was able to tell which direction various sounds were coming from. She says, on leaving the ReSound offices and within 15 minutes, I had my Apple Watch set up, and it was a real wow moment when I made my first call to my dad via my Apple Watch. His voice came straight into my ears. He sounded different, so much clearer than before. It dawned on me I'd never heard my dad's real voice before. My mom, ever faithful support and chauffeur, sat beside me, sounding totally different, and even I sounded different to myself. It was strange, very strange, hard to process, but it made me feel so emotional that day, day one. I was experiencing so much, new things for the first time ever. I spoke into my Apple Watch, talking to my dad. It was quite amazing. My iPhone was safely tucked away in my bag. And I'm going to read another quote from her where she talks about safety. She says, I guess to sum up to date, since the 24th of April when I received my Apple Watch, I have found a completely new way of dealing with my everyday challenges. The watch allows me to get from A to B safely with guide dog Eunice using maps and Taptics. My friends who have Apple Watch can get my attention using Taptics even if I cannot see them, which is more often than not. But by using Taptics, it alerts me. It's comforting and it keeps me safe and confident in situations where previously I may have felt vulnerable. More and more of my friends now have Apple Watch, and we have developed some basic codes to communicate by messaging on the small screen. And of course, I'm alerted by the vibrating, which is brilliant. So again, another good example of how these are really helping people in the real world. Now let's talk about smart hearing. So in addition to smart hearing aids, there are smart listening systems like the SoundHawk Scoop, and that's designed for anyone who wants to boost their hearing in noisy environments. Another new item called the Dash is 3 kinds of devices in one. It's a set of noise-canceling earbuds for streaming music from a smartphone. It's a music storage device. You can listen to music without your smartphone. And it's a fitness tracking system measuring heart rate, running pace, distance, and more. So it turns out that the ear is a good place to measure your vital signs because your ear doesn't move around much like your wrist, and it can be used to measure all these things like heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, and pulse. And these little devices are controlled by gestures, so you can lightly swipe in different directions on them while they're in your ears to control various features. Another device called the Hear Active Listening System from Doppler Labs is a set of earbuds designed to customize real-time live sounds in your environment. So instead of streaming music from your smartphone, it's meant to be used at live music concerts or other situations where you want to customize what you're hearing in real time. And analysts are predicting that the market for hearables is going to be really large since this type of technology is advancing quickly and the prices are coming down a lot. And there's a commentator named Mike Elgin. I'd like to read you a quote from what he says about this. He says, these devices will give us super hearing like a comic book mutant superhero. The ability to customize which sounds we hear from our environment and which we tune out will become far more powerful. We'll be able to carry on clear conversations at loud concerts, or do the opposite, tune out nearby conversations and hear only the music. We'll be able to set a range for the sound we hear, only sounds generated within 10 feet of us, with everything else blocked out, for example. Or when we choose, we'll be able to block out all sound. When somebody says something that we don't catch, a quick gesture will give us instant replay on what was said, and we'll be able to retroactively capture audio for posterity. Now, this might bring to your mind some dystopian science fiction scenarios, right? Have you seen the movie Her, where the main character walks around with a smart earpiece and that serves as his interface to an AI-based personal assistant? Or maybe you've seen this episode of a TV series called Black Mirror. It's on Netflix. This episode is called The Entire History of You, where everything is recorded all the time and can be played back instantly because everyone has a chip implanted in their brain. These are kind of fun to watch and think about. But like every new technology, the use of hearables has potential for both utopian and dystopian futures. On the positive side, one of the main reasons that people use any type of wearable is to reduce the need to access their smartphone for every little basic task. With wearables, it's possible to blend technology more easily into your life without breaking the flow. And for people that are just beginning to experience some hearing loss but don't use hearing aids, these advances will really be helpful. Some estimates say that 16% of the world population will suffer from hearing loss this year. And for those over 45, there's a 1 in 5 chance that they have some hearing loss. And of course, some people don't want the stigma of being seen as disabled by wearing highly visible assistive devices like traditional hearing aids. Many of these new products are stylish, modern, used by all kinds of people, something that helps them gain acceptance. For earbuds as fashion, check out the Kickstarter campaign called Own Phones, the world's first 3D printed wireless earbuds. They even include a jewelry collection with earbuds made of silver, brass, bronze, or gold plating. And 3D printing makes the buds custom fitted to the shape of your ear. Now let's go to our category of sight. And with this, smartphone cameras are being used in interesting ways beyond just taking photos. Having a camera in your mobile device means it can be used kind of like a seeing eye, bringing visual information into an app for use. So let's look at some examples. Google Translate for iOS or Android uses the camera to take a photo of text in a language you don't understand and gives you instant translation. So, for example, I was living in Budapest for a few months last summer. I was doing a website redesign there for university. And of course, I don't speak Hungarian. So while I was shopping in a grocery store, I wanted to read the label on a package of frozen cherries. I wasn't sure if they were pitted or not because I like to use them in smoothies. So using Google Translate, I pointed my iPhone camera to the label, and immediately it showed the words pitted cherries superimposed over the Hungarian words on the label. So as you can imagine, that was really useful. It can translate without you needing to capture the photo just by pointing your camera at the text. And you can read a lot more about it on Google's website where they talk about their deep neural net technology. So another example of using the camera is in this app called LeafSnap for tree identification. This one's for iOS only. It recognizes tree species by photos you take of their leaves, and it was developed by Columbia University, University of Maryland, and the Smithsonian. So when you see a tree you want to identify, you put the leaf against a white background and snap a photo with the app, and it matches the shape of the leaf with the database to recognize the tree and bring you to the entry. So like any good nature guide, it's full of descriptive information about trees, the seeds, the flowers, the buds, and all sorts of things. Right now it only includes trees found in the northeastern US and Canada, and there's a separate version for trees in the UK. I hope they'll eventually make it for all areas of the US and other parts of the world. And you can watch a demo video on their website. All these links will be in the handout. You can also use the camera for currency recognition, and LookTel Money Reader for iOS instantly recognizes currency and speaks the denomination. So this makes it easy for blind or visually impaired people to recognize and count bills. You point the camera at the bill and it speaks the amount in real time. It also displays the denomination on the screen in high contrast large numerals for those who have partial vision. And it recognizes 21 different currencies from all over the world, and there's a demo video on their homepage as well. There's a new app for iOS. It's just in beta right now. I just learned about it. It does a similar thing. It recognizes items that it sees around you and speaks what they are out loud to you, like bathroom sink or whatever. And so it's still in beta, it's still learning, but it's worth taking a look at their website to see it in action, so it can recognize like outlets or whatever. So give that a try sometime. You can also use your camera as a scanner, and ScanBot is a really good app. It's a document and QR code scanner for iOS and Android. You just open the app, use the camera to snap a photo of your document, and it automatically recognizes the edges and offers tips to guide you to move your phone to the best view of the document before it snaps. You can also scan barcodes and QR codes with it, and it saves your documents either as PDFs or JPEGs, and you can save them to various cloud services like Dropbox, Evernote, or Google Drive. And if you upgrade to Pro, you can get optical character recognition and a bunch of other cool features. So it's really handy to have a scanner in your pocket at all times. Students use this a lot to scan printed worksheets and other files in order to be able to access them from anywhere. Now let's talk about augmented reality. Elements 4D for Android and iOS is an app that works together with a set of wooden blocks or paper cubes you can make yourself with a downloadable PDF template to show visually what happens when you combine two elements from the periodic table. So it's for studying chemistry. You open the app and you point your device towards an element on the block. Then you add a second element and move them together until they touch in your augmented view. Then you can see what's created from the combination on your device. For example, hydrogen plus oxygen results in water. And they have a demo on their website too. They also have downloadable lesson plans for teachers, elementary school, middle school, and high school with this app. Also, they make an app for learning human anatomy with augmented reality called Anatomy 4D for Android or iOS. And as you can see, these type of apps just use the camera in an interesting way to enhance learning for students of all sorts of abilities. So now that we've finished looking at the demos, I'd like to go over to the chat room and ask you, how do you see these tools as benefiting everyone? Did you have a chance to think about that? go ahead and type your thoughts into the chat box and tell us what you think. Did any of these particularly stand out in your mind as something you'd like to try or tell people about? And in what ways do you see them being used in different situations? Go ahead and put your thoughts in the chat box. And I'll just give you a moment to think about that. I was talking to somebody about my Amazon Alexa, the Echo device, and she was imagining using it with her elderly mom who has trouble pushing buttons on devices so she could listen to music and audiobooks. Okay, here's someone commenting. The books would be a great way to teach other languages. Yes, good point. I definitely see them for that. Anybody else have some thoughts about these devices or apps? I wonder if any of you have an Amazon Echo. Okay, I like that these new technologies and apps, it opens a whole new world to me as I am hearing impaired. Oh, good. I'm glad that you're here and learning about these things. And what I'm hoping is that librarians can recommend these things to hearing impaired people. Okay, someone says, these are very interesting to share with our college students. I will also share with my friend who has a special needs child. Great, I'm glad to hear it. Anybody else have a comment? What about the relay system in libraries? I'm not sure what you mean by a relay system. Do you want to add some thoughts about that? Someone else says, here in the South, Google Translate could help with speaking with other people who do not know how to speak Spanish and English. Right, excellent. I've used it when I was traveling a lot. I lived in Oaxaca, Mexico for a few months in 2013, and I'm not really great at Spanish. I'm just very basic with it, so it was helpful to have Google Translate. Okay, someone says, I use a walker, so it seems that any technology that would enable me to be hands-free. Yes, absolutely. Like being able to talk to devices. Okay, a lot of these apps I wish I had when I was in high school or college science classes. Yeah, me too. It would have been a lot more interesting and less boring. Not that I think science is boring, but I used to skip chemistry class to go to music history class. I ended up being a music major. Let's see, we have a few autistic students here at the university, and some of these would benefit them. Great, yeah. I think a lot of people, get benefit from those. It follows along with the text and highlights each word to help you focus. Any other thoughts from all of you about specific uses? How can I find these apps online so I can assist? Well, the handout that you're going to get at the end will have links to everything in it, so you'll be able to use that to find all of these apps and devices. Great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and continue, and let's talk about some specific opportunities for libraries. So since librarians care about providing access to everyone of all ages and abilities, it's really important to have an understanding of how this whole move towards mobile computing with natural user interfaces really is helpful to people. And if we understand accessibility as part of a larger system that helps everyone, that'll help keep it from being sidelined as an add-on for when we have extra time or money, and when does that ever happen, right? So really this workshop's meant to be just a starting point to help you get a sense of where mobile learning is going. And with this knowledge, you can begin to offer services that help your users leverage these technologies. So let's talk about a few specific ideas. Now, I'm not suggesting that we become tech support, because obviously we can't do that, but we can be information experts who point people to the best resources. You could make both print and online guides to these apps and devices using the categories that we talked about today, like vision, hearing, motor skills, or touch, sound, and sight. You could also offer workshops either by your own staff or by invited experts. You could partner with your institution's Office of Accessibility if you have one, or other experts in your community. And your workshops could be framed as for a wider audience than just people with just disabilities, because they help everyone. So I did a little brainstorming myself and came up with a few ideas for workshops. So these are just some fictional title ideas. You could have one called Talk to Your Devices, the best apps and tools for talking to and with your mobile devices. Or supplement your language learning with Google Translate, useful features for communicating with everyone. Or Listen to Your Readings, the best audio narration tools and apps for listening on the go. You could also provide devices like the Amazon Echo. It costs $180, so that's affordable. I think some libraries are doing this. You could put one in a conference room and let people try it out. So when your staff has basic familiarity with some of these options, they can better assist users and point them to accessible solutions for all of their learning and knowledge creation. So it's really good to support your staff training, and there are a number of ideas in the resource guide I'm going to give you of online courses and things for your staff. So if you want to continue learning about these topics, look at the resource guide that I'm giving you. It has books, articles, websites, and courses this is the link to it. So if you want, you can download it right away. You'll also get this in your email later, so don't worry if you miss it. And Vicky's also going to paste that link into the chat box at some point. And in the resource guide, I recommend some really excellent books, several articles that go into more depth about what we talked about today, websites like all the accessibility settings for different devices, and lists of apps, courses, and newsletters. Also recently, it just came out last month, a report for ALA called Mobile Learning Trends, and the whole first third of it is about accessibility like we talked about today. And you can find a link to buy that on my website under NicoleHenig.com/books. Also, I invite you to sign up for my free email newsletter. It comes out about once a month called Mobile Apps News. It's an easy way to stay current with what's happening with the best educational apps. And when you sign up, you'll get a copy of my PDF document called 10 Tips for Finding the Best Apps. So you can do that at Mobile Apps News off my website, and it'll be in the handout as well. So I hope that you'll implement some of these ideas, to empower your communities with this knowledge. And I'd love to hear from you to see how your library is offering innovative services with these technologies. There's a contact form on my website, or you can follow me on Twitter and contact me that way. I tweet about these kinds of topics almost every day about libraries and mobile technology. So once again, this is the link to the resource guide, and now I'd like to open it up for any final questions in the chat room. Okay, I see someone else's comment from earlier. Voice dictation works for work, helps people with carpal tunnel syndrome. Yeah, that's really a good point. Okay, someone is starting to type. I didn't see the whole question there. If anybody else has questions, go ahead and add them into the chat, and I'll let you finish adding that one. It just says Nicole, but I don't see anything after it under Barbara's question. Have specific questions or ideas about how you want to use this information? Okay, you can always email me a question later if you want. Okay, it says, thank you. This is an excellent webinar. I will definitely follow up and send the information. Great. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I'd like to thank you guys all for attending, and please do keep in touch. Sign up for Mobile Apps News. Use this information and let me know what you do with it. Thanks a lot, everybody.